apologize for that. Venita has been here since 6:15, and so we really have been trying to work through it ever since then. But you know, it's took more than that. So we are live, and so happy to have G.O. Moses with us tonight. But I'm going to turn it over to Nicole. Nicole Jackson.
All right. Hello. See everybody. Gio, we've certainly missed you. Good to see you.
Missed you guys too.
So this is Welcome to the Global Black Feminist Reading Circle. Tonight we are going to discuss chapters 5 through 7 of Nicole Dennis-Benn's Here Comes the Sun. Let's start with introductions. My name is Nicole Jackson Wilson. Oh, that was the Michelle's holding up the book. My name is, there's the book. My name is Nicole Wilson, and I'm joining tonight from College Station, Texas. Michelle, if you would like to introduce yourself. Next.
I am Logan Michelle Odom in New York City with the beautifully covered book.
Welcome. Leonie, if you introduce yourself, please.
My name is Leonie, and I'm joining you from Toronto, Ontario, Canada.
All right. Welcome, Leonie. Gio, would you love to introduce yourself?
Okay. I'm Georgette Moses, and I'm joining you guys from Columbia, South Carolina.
All right. And Kim, the lovely Kim. Kim, would you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Kim, and I'm dialing in from New York. And Gio, it's just so nice to see you.
Nice to see you too, Kim.
Definitely. Feels good to see all these beautiful faces tonight. So next week, Leonie is presenting chapters 8 through 10. Is it?
Yeah.
Am I correct? Okay.
I think so.
8 and 9.
Oh, 8 and 9 next week.
Right.
Okay. All right. So we're looking forward to that next week, certainly. Okay. So despite the fact that I realize I have a few typos here, but I wanted to start, or I just made a connection to Nayyirah Waheed's poem, and just started with kind of that. Hi, Venita, can you hear us?
I still can't hear you. Wow.
My guess would be that that other device that she has, that she says not in the room, it might be clear. It might be connected. It might be close enough that it's connected to her computer.
And she should disconnect it?
Probably.
Okay, y'all go ahead. I'll call her and tell her that.
Okay. Okay. So the poet explains, or what she writes is, she says, cruel mothers are still mothers. They make us wars. They make us revolution. They teach us the truth early. Mothers are humans who sometimes give birth to their pain. Whew. And did Dolores.
Hi.
Hey.
Leonie.
Nothing like a little music.
Right.
I don't have music
Al
on.
Green at that. Al Green too. I know
Yeah.
that's right. Let's stay together. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I'll try that. Bye.
Good. I hope she's successful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay,
Do you
can
want to
you
go
hear
ahead,
me?
Nicole?
Okay, yeah. So just kind of thinking about Dolores' pain and then how she could have metaphorically birthed her pain. I'm just gonna go ahead and read the summary, and then we'll just take numbers to read and respond to. Okay, so the summary states chapters 5 through 7 provide a messy and yet sensual exposition in which we learn family secrets that disrupt even as they confirm elements of the familiar mother-daughter relationship slash connection that much Black diasporic literature boasts, from slave narratives to contemporary texts. That is, Nicole Dennis-Benn does not treat the reader to the mundane construction of mother and daughter relationships that showcase literary tropes like the quote unquote strong, suffering Black woman and her dutiful daughters. Instead, we're treated to a monstrosity that forces us to reckon with Dolores's, and one might even add Ella's, shortcomings and or complicity and the generational effect. Still, it's not just the mother's complicity that reels the reader in. I assert that the book is a page turner because the author has a beautiful way of humanizing the good, the bad, and the ugly. That crafty ability to mystify the familiar while demystifying the strange. Indeed, chapters 5 through 7 delve deeper into Margot, Verdine, and Thandi's interiority while exposing Dolores's emotional wall, a void that has undoubtedly impacted both daughters. Given this, I believe Dennis-Benn wants the reader to walk away with a visceral understanding that Dolores has become engulfed in her original sin. So just kind of setting us up to kind of be thinking about the mother-daughter relationships here. Okay, so Leonie, do you mind reading number 1?
Sure. In the 5th chapter, the reader sees a deepening, albeit non-sexual, yet deeply intimate connection between Verdine and Margot. Let's begin by parsing thoughts about these two characters, because despite Margot feeling as if she has confirmation that they fit together, it is difficult to trust Margot's feelings. A, what are your thoughts here? B, also, can we connect this to our earlier reading of Audre Lorde's I Am Your Sister?
Anyone?
Wait. Why you see they still do this to me, Georgette?
Michelle.
Well, because Nicole was so good about getting the notes and questions to us so early, it did actually give me a chance to think about some of these questions. So on a couple of them, I have written responses for the teacher.
Okay.
So on this question, I'll read you what I wrote, which is, Verdine was traumatized by her first sexual encounter with Margot, who went screaming from the house as if she had been raped. And Verdine still lives with the effects of her sexual relationship with Akua and is well aware of social attitudes toward homosexuals. She wants and needs to be very sure that this is what Margot wants. Margot, on the other hand, is yearning for real love, which she sees in Verdine, but doesn't quite understand Verdine's concerns and unwillingness to accommodate the bi-curious. While Margot wants love, she's never had it and doesn't know how to give it. She's also not really sure she's a lesbian. She does reach orgasm having sex with men, but she has never loved or felt loved by one of them. And then I think on part B, Audre Lorde, to me, the key message of I Am Your Sister is that I am a part of you, a reflection of you, an essential element in your existence. And what you do to me, you do to yourself. And so considering the extreme violence that we see in chapter 7 as sexual experience with being the present day. Reason about being.
Is anyone else losing?
Another lesbian.
Michelle sound. Michelle, your sound is not coming through clearly at all. We're losing quite a bit.
You can't hear me?
Yeah, I actually can't follow you. I'm losing too many words.
There. I think my connection is like delayed.
Did you want to try without your video? That sometimes can help with audio. If you turn off your video while you talk, that might help with the bandwidth.
Is that better?
So far, yeah.
Oh, okay. So I was just saying that to me, for the Black community, Lorde was telling us that we lose an essential part of our power and strength when we suppress the natural energies of any aspect of ourselves. And so homophobia is an Achilles heel.
All right,
okay.
Good job. Yeah.
You get an apple from the teacher.
Yeah, good job. Wow.
Thank you.
Definitely. So well connected there. Do we have anyone else who'd like to comment? Georgette, Kim? Leonie? Anyone?
I think Michelle killed it, so.
Like,
how can we come behind that?
Yeah, it's like, okay, just drop by.
Right.
Yeah.
No.
It's okay. We love it when you do that, though. We do.
I will say that I find myself really rooting for Verdine. It's as if she's paid her dues, right? And as Michelle so eloquently stated, I think that Margot is bi-curious. And at this point, it's almost like protecting the character. Like, I want to protect Verdine from experiencing that heartache that she experienced with Akua. I'm also wondering if, sometimes we're in relationships, might I kind of step out on a limb here and say a person's looking to be parented instead of, looking for a partner. So I'm wondering, because I do notice how nurturing Verdine can be with Margot. And, I'm wondering what eventually happens there, given that dynamic.
Yeah.
Venita, can you hear us, Venita?
Yes, I went from my laptop to my iPad. Hi.
Okay. Hi, Venita.
Hey, Gio. Hi, Kim.
Hey.
I'm happy to see you. Hi, Leonie.
Hello.
Everybody. Okay,
Good
I'm
to
sorry. Let's
see
go.
you. Would you introduce yourself, Venita? Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Venita Walker, and I'm joining you finally from Cromwell, Connecticut.
Yay.
Welcome.
Hey.
So happy.
Yes. Okay. Well, if there are no additional
I just
remarks.
wanted to add one thing.
Oh, okay. Yes.
I'm reading this the story, and I'm so concerned with the place and the setting. So the stakes are so high for Verdine to mess around with Margot with all the dead animals on her door and everything. And I'm wondering if people are looking through the windows and when are they going to be found out. I don't know. It's such a risk to love Margot. And so, oh boy, that's what I feel. So I'm more into the emotional feeling of the story. So I am rooting for them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. Definitely, Kim. I agree. Wow. Powerful. Okay. Anyone else? No.
I'm wondering if you had any connections that you made through the reading, our previous reading of I Am Your Sister.
Yeah, I was just thinking about essentially like what Lord tells us all. It's the reason why we call her mother in hip hop feminist lingo. But that notion of, I guess it's just a notion of self-actualization, like despite oppressive structures, despite repressive regimes, standing. And I'm thinking in particular of how Lord, can you all recall that one? I'm trying to remember if it was a poem, but she refers to herself by so many names. She's like, she calls herself a warrior and just all these things. And so that's why I'm kind of partial to Verdine. Like I see that. And honestly, I don't even know if Margot is deserving of Verdine. So I'll see how that plays out. But I'm just not even sure that I want her to. That's too much, of an emotional risk. But absolutely, I was thinking about that, how at those stages of her life and her past, as they unfold, I would put those labels like she's a warrior. She had to, deal with grief and, kind of all those names, among other things that the Lord talks about.
That's great. I have to say that when I think about the I Am Your Sister, one of the things that I've struggled with in the writings in that book was that I felt like Lord was very Western in her thinking. It was almost like she forgot her West Indianness. And so she didn't have the empathy that I wanted to see. Whereas I think that Nicole Dennis-Benn has kept that empathy that I wanted to see. So I think I find her characters brighter as a result and more, just have more layers. Whereas I felt with Lord that valuable and inspiring as her writings are, she just struck me as not West Indian, like in her writing. Like it just hit me like in the face. Like, no.
That's a really good point.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, I could see that. Wow. Even though she had the problematic mother in My Mother's Mortar, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, so whereas Ben, there's this spectrum, but they're all still humanized.
Yeah, right. And not all of her characters have that same depth. Like I think that Verdine in some way she's also the most Western of them, right? But like that piece that when she was writing about the mother, like Dolores, about her being on her going into town from country, and just like knowing that, hearing of that experience firsthand from people, and just that whole experience, it was just like, okay, yes, there's like so many layers to this identity that I didn't get from reading Lord's writing, or often lots of people who are from the Caribbean who write, because there's a need to like so assimilate.
Yeah.
Like being West Indian is a very dangerous thing in the West Indies, but it's way more dangerous in other parts of the world. Like it's a very different way of being.
Yeah.
Really?
Wow.
Mhm.
You want to elaborate?
Well, the thing is like, I won't even say being West Indian. That's too broad. But when I think of people like the women in my family, and how, they go through the work of leaving one place to go to another, and still, like, I found it odd that they still hung on to themselves. Like, I was not. There are lots of people that I know who are from the same place that my family are from, who are completely Westernized, and I so was not raised like that. Like, it was just, yeah. I mean, I was part of the reason why I think that I'm a person that has known who I am and holds on to who I am despite my circumstances, because I was raised by somebody who I felt held on to who she was. She didn't change. She didn't become a completely different person.
So
And
do you
it wasn't encouraged. Sorry.
so do you think Audre Lorde fell into that category where her family structure she was encouraged, and even just to be successful in academia, she had to
Yeah.
be as Western as possible,
Yeah.
being that she was also lesbian, so that that's
Yes.
like
There's no
three
way.
strikes
Yeah.
against her
Yeah. There's no way.
already.
There's no way in how she could have held on to
Okay.
much of that identity and survive academia. Academia is so rigid.
Right. Even white guys have a problem. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
hanging on there.
It's like you're allowed to be different. You're not allowed to be different, but you're allowed to be eccentric, but only if you're white and rich. Like, it's just weird. Well, you know this, Nicole. So.
Okay.
Wow.
And
That
you bring out a great thing about culture, and I think that's what uh, Dens was trying to do. Did I pronounce your name right? She wanted to talk about culture in this piece, and that wasn't Audre Lorde's thing in I Am Your Sister. So she was as authentic as she could be, bringing out the issues using her characters that she wanted to, about what's been going on in Jamaica, what's going on now, what's probably going to be going on there because of the colonialism.
Yeah. Yeah.
that makes
That's an
sense.
important piece. Yeah. Because
But
I can really. Yeah.
do you also feel that as a tool, fiction can take you there more so than nonfiction and poetry?
Yeah.
I think when we compare fiction to the books that we read with Audre Lorde, it's different for me because it was less storytelling. It was more memoir. So I'm just wondering, when I'm writing fiction, I need to give the reader so much information and paint this picture. So I was just wondering if you thought that because it's a different style of writing, does that contribute to it. And then the other thing is that it's a different time. And from listening to the author of this book, she seemed like this was actually a lot of her story. This was her personal account of being a gay woman in Jamaica.
That's a good.
And she was an adult grown woman in Jamaica.
Yeah. And that's an important piece because I think in memoir, there's a bias towards cleaning things up, right?
Yeah.
And then in fiction, you have a lot more liberation to like get as, you know, down and dirty as you want to be. Like you don't have to write, your characters can be completely messed up. You know, you can, you know, she's playing around with like language here, you know, because there's lots of West Indian writers who write like Victorian like writers, like that's how they write. And Marlon James even talks about that, where he was like, his first book was going to be written with like a Victorian English, like more like Dickens than anything else. And he couldn't write the book until he finally was like, this has to have patois in it. Right? Okay. So you have so much liberty with fiction, and in memoir always has a layer and the bias of prestige on it. Because you can't live a life and then feel like you haven't learned anything, right? Whereas in fiction, you can have characters who make mistakes. And that's what makes them interesting, right? Like Dolores is interesting because she's such a screw up, but yet we know why.
Okay.
Wow, that's a long discussion. But...
And the town is fictionalized, right? So the town is also fictionalized. So that gives her license to say whatever she wants to say because the bones aren't going to come back to haunt her.
Yeah. That's a good observation. Yeah. I think when I was making connections to Lord, I guess I was thinking more or less about the poetry and the short story, My Mother's Martyr, which is still more memoir. So yeah, and that's kind of not fair to kind of compare the two, but also about the freedom to express that sensuality that I think Lord had to write through constraints. And I think we could recognize that even in her fiction. And it's more, you know, also the criticism of, what was that television show, Empire, that when it comes to homosexual encounters, that people will complain, or even the football player who kissed his partner on television. You know, that it's like people complain and it's like, but Ben did a wonderful job, you know, this very sensual, sexual encounter. And she writes it, right? She does it, I mean, it happens. And I'm wondering how many times did Lord want to go there and had to step back? You know, how often did she have to and obviously she was writing at a different time. So some progress, I'd say, but not enough progress here. Okay. So what, Michelle, would you take number 2 for us, please?
Yeah, and I just want to say on this last point that even though it's fiction, you know, I'm thinking about Dennis-Benn's mother saying to her before she published the book, I can't believe you're gonna like tell all these family secrets. So apparently it's fiction, but fiction that cuts pretty close to home. On question 2, I am thinking about the quest journey that each individual woman is on. Margot, Dolores, Thandi, and Verdine. What is the significance of their respective journeys, even as the country contends with a drought? I'm not saying a word.
Would you go ahead to the A, B, and C? I didn't even realize that was a question.
Question should be a question. What is the significance? We receive greater clarity regarding our quest during droughts, both literal and metaphorical. Please share a personal example. And B, staying with the concept of droughts, if we were to bring food and drink into this conversation, as we understand ways that droughts impact sustenance, are the characters metaphorically hungry or thirsty? Is there a difference between the two concepts? And C, what happens when we confuse one for the other?
Wow, Nicole. Because when you say thirsty, I'm thinking about the colloquial term the kids use now. Oh, she's thirsty. He's thirsty. I'm like, now I have to think about hungry. And what is the difference? That's powerful.
I remember hearing at some point that if you're ever on a desert island, it's better not to eat if there's no fresh water. It's not a good idea to be too thirsty. So I think these girls are thirsty. I don't think they've had any fresh water. and the reason why I said that, I think that there's a level of love that they just have never had, and they don't necessarily offer each other. So when you see, especially Margot having sex with so many people and having her orgasms and whatnot, she's full. she's definitely full, but I don't think that her thirst has been quenched. And they're all hoping that the younger sister at some point is going to quench their thirst.
Oh, that was very good, Kim. Wow.
Thank you very much. I do try.
Venita?
I'm just listening to you all because you are on some crazy this evening. Which is good. I need that. That's why I'm so happy to see you all. But I was actually, my mind was still on what Leonie said. Being married to a person that is Jamaican and very in touch with who he is for the last 35 or so years, I can appreciate her writing. It's very vivid. It's what I hear. His grandmother's from upper country, a little town called Time and Patience. And when you come from upper country, it's like being in the backwoods of the South. Mm-hmm. And you go to the city, which is Kingston, it's like going to New York. So her writing, I just want to give that comment. Maybe that's why her mother said what she said, because it is very vivid. And the only thing she did was change the name to protect the guilty. But it probably is a very true story. So that's why Mama was a little bit worked, because she just changed some names. Everything that's in that she's wrote in 5 and 7, I can see it, because my husband is still very connected. His mother was not one of those people to disconnect herself. His friends, whether they're educated or not, he has friends that are engineers, he has friends that are doctors from Jamaica, he has friends that are Masons. They all are very still connected. And I did not wonder if it's more likely that women disconnect themselves more when they come here to assimilate than men. From me being exposed to both professional women from Jamaica opposed to the professional men. So that's another question. Does sex have anything to do with the disconnect?
Yeah, you never see groups of women, of Jamaican women together.
What?
It's true. I think you can go anywhere. My uncle left Canada 20 years ago and came back and could literally find his friends in the same place.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
Wow.
Yes. Well, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt that
Wow.
train of thought, but I was just relating to her book, and it is very vivid in my experience with sending barrels to Jamaica, with hearing people tell people you look like a OB, with the coolie term that they use. I mean,
What does that mean?
well, coolie is the fair-skinned, good-haired people. They're usually mixed with Chinese. My husband's grandfather's Chinese, or they're mixed with anything other than all African.
Yeah.
So they come out with the fair skin, with the either straight or curly, or what black folk call good hair, whatever that may be. But that's it. So coolie is a broad term. It's just not, because Dolores happened to go to bed with a man that was part Indian or whatever. Anything that's fair skin with good hair is a coolie.
This is the thing. This is the thing that is so funny about the culture. You take the thing that is insecure about you, and that becomes your nickname.
That becomes your nickname. Isn't that something?
Wow.
And it's called
Yeah,
coolie.
that's the way it works.
Yes. And I was thinking about Verdi and Margot, and how vividly they described Verdi described, the church people coming by with the Bible throwers. She's very right. How they're very uptight and just terrified because they're so conditioned with their religion, which is usually Catholic, from what I see on the island, which is very true. Very homophobic. I can see them doing it because they are very homophobic. Except when they get here and they bust out. Because they're going to bust out once they get here.
Right.
I mean, really, it really can account for a lot of the homosexuality we have that you witness in our country. It's not that we have more American homosexuals, but in other countries, Dominican Republic, all the islands, Barbados, it's very suppressed and dangerous for you. So once they get here, they just like, bam, But it's very good. She's an excellent writer, and it's very true from what I know. And we've always been connected. I've been connected through my husband, which his mother is very connected, and his friends are connected. So that's why Mom was upset. I just want to answer, address Michelle's question too, why Mom was so upset. Because she just changed some names, but that's the true story. That's not me.
Well, I guess she can't go home for a minute.
Yeah. That story
I know that's right. I know that's right. I guess I was for part for the quest and droughts. And I was thinking through like biblical symbolism, but and I thought it was just so interesting for Venita to be joining us, because when we talk about like the contemplative discourses and how I think this still has a connection to, the text that we all read together and kind of delved into the contemplative that those droughts, and I mean like more metaphorical, that there is something so significant that we learn on our respective journeys, during those droughts. And not necessarily like, I get when people say, oh, you're, and growing up like Southern Baptist Christians, but in Christianity, like, oh, your test, I would always hear people say, oh, your test is going to create your testimony. But I'm going beyond that and not necessarily anchoring this in a religion, but a spiritual aspect, that there's this drought. And of all these characters, once again, I feel like I'm just impartial to her, Verdine. She's more so a contemplative to me, a mystic, and so I'm just curious to see like what's going to happen to her and with her I know Michelle already knows, and I'm making myself not go to the back of the book to find out. But yes, okay. All right. Well, we can move to number 3. Kim, do you mind?
Number 3. We learned that both Thandi and Margot are victims of sexual violence. The difference is that Thandi's attacker, appears to be a stranger, while Margot's violator was a vile person whom her mother was intimately acquainted with. In other words, Dolores has blood on her hands. A. Is there room in your sisterhood for women like Dolores? Why not? B. Is Dolores's complicity becoming a trope that is overly utilized in Black literature? I am specifically thinking about books like Sapphire, the movie Precious, that seek to unveil how trauma begets trauma. C. But do such characterizations do more harm than good? Wowzy, wow.
Would you like me to start?
Yes, please.
Is there room in your sisterhood for women like Dolores? No, there isn't. Not in 2018. I don't know if there's ever been room, but it was the times. Because I've had people, and it's more prevalent than what most of us know because of the secrets that's kept in the dark in Black families. But I've had not only distant relatives, and not really distant, but not my immediate family, and friends that have experienced the secrets that Dolores has kept, with Margot being a victim of rape by one of her acquaintances. As a matter of fact, I know too many people. So that it's just overwhelming. It's just overwhelming for me when I see that and when I hear that, because that is a problem that I have never been a sweep under the rug person. I condemn the sweep under the rug. Sweep under the rug is killing us, Black females, and always has. Keep our business in the house. He's giving us something to eat, putting food on the table, so we can't say anything. He's our neighbor. He's your cousin. Like I said, the people that have been very close to me have experienced what Margot has experienced. And it really ruins a victim. And they are victims, sometimes for life. I have a cousin that I know this happened to when she was 10 years old up to the age of around 12 or 13 years old, and she has never been right since, and she's 59 years old. And that secret is still a secret. I know the secret, and I'm sure there's others know the secret. As a matter of fact, I actually threw the secret out there. I was so angry at the secrets being kept in the family and people being hurt. And when I threw that secret out there, I'm surprised I got out the room alive.
Wow.
That's how bad it was. I had to share it with you because that really touched me, because it's really real. And it happens more than you think. A lot more than you think.
Mm-hmm.
And because that secret, I barely got that room alive. And to the day, I don't speak to her mother. And it's been 40 years.
Wow. Ooh.
So I'm sorry to interrupt it. These chapters are really heavy for me. And that's why I'm saying that this is so, it's not just there, it's everywhere. Everything that she's experiencing, I know people that are close to me. I know friends, associates that experience all of it, from the homosexuality, down to the rape, down to the secrets. It's just, so no, to answer that question.
Wow, powerful. I do understand. Anyone
Venita,
else?
why do you keep apologizing for interrupting?
I just feel like I just feel like I'm getting off, you know, maybe I'm getting off course, but these chapters grabbed me so much because I know, I mean, I could taste and feel and see the people that have been victimized in the same way, whether it's Thandi, whether it's Margot, whether it's Verdi. This is not fiction. You know.
Right.
Okay.
She wrote, it's appeared in a fictional
Well,
way.
all right,
But
the devil's advocate in me, the P in me in Myers-Briggs wants to take the coin just to see where it goes. That means it's time for me to take my 7:30. I don't know, really needed this. Dolores is not someone I would want to be close to, but as you were speaking, Venita, I was thinking about you know, that thing about the circle of influence where you have some people that are out here, my video is stalling, that are a little closer in, some people that are very close to you. Certainly Dolores is not one that I would want close in. You know, because I'd be watching my back. And if we don't,
can you turn off your video again, Michelle? Can you turn off your video again? We're losing too much. Sorry.
Okay, it's all right. Can you hear me?
Yeah, yes. Much better.
Okay. So I was saying, you know, Dolores is not someone I would want in my close inner circle. But on the other hand, if we don't make room somewhere in the sisterhood for women like that, then, you know, I think we are perhaps dooming ourselves to perpetuating kinds of beliefs and behaviors that we see in women like that. And so, you know, we may not be obligated, but it may be in our best interest to do all we can to help our sisters grow.
I think we're obligated. I don't know if it's because I've worked in anti-violence against women sector for so long, but there's so many of these stories. I have a hard time judging, I don't know, condemning women for this kind of choice. It's so pervasive. This kind of I don't know why I'm echoing, but this kind of trauma is so pervasive that, and I don't think that we even know what the depths are in terms of how it manifests itself. And I can understand the pull to like want to condemn somebody because we have this like notion of justice. Justice is not really a thing I believe in. Like, interesting concept, but I kind of think it's also nonsense. But yeah, this is tough stuff. Like I have seen and heard from a lot of women about why it is that they would stay with somebody who was abusive or stay with somebody who hurt their child. And I can't, it doesn't make what they did right. But it certainly doesn't make it, it's not a mystery to me. It's not, it's something it's understandable.
I understand, because I was a witness. However, and I don't condemn this person. What I do have a problem with is the prison that the victim has to live in. Because if they bring that issue out, then all the people around them, because of this big secret, just lunge on this person as if you cannot come out your prison. You know, that victim is sacrificed by staying in their prison, because if you come out of your prison, that means that their mother had to deal with that ugly, so you're forced to stay in the prison.
It's very true. I think of the Me Too. Yeah.
It's this, I don't condemn anyone. I just think it's just horrible for everyone, you know.
Yeah,
And
I
I
hear
do
you.
know it's very complicated, but I do know the victim a lot of times is forced to stay in that prison. And if they come out of that prison, then they have to walk away from everything they know.
I posted an article recently, maybe yesterday, that's good reading. It's by a woman pastor talking about the role that the church plays in fostering silence among victims, and strategies that churches can use to try to build systems of accountability. And so, you know, and so I hear you, Venita, and I understand, and my gut too is with the victim. But I think that if we're not talking about how to change, you know, one thing I like about this book is she throws in a lot of little superstition, you know, along the way. Margot encountering the John Crows, and having to witness them come down and eat the carcasses of the wounded. Dolores scrubbing down Margot as a child to remove the evil from her. Margot showering with pimento leaves to, you know, erase whatever might have happened when she saw those John Crows. And so, you know, we have all of these beliefs, some of them religious, some of them cultural, some of them, I think, we don't even know where they come from. And they just go on generation after generation. And so I think that until we get all this stuff on the table and really deconstruct it and really begin to help each other question why we're doing what we're doing, and what is the impact of what we are doing, and how can we do better, we're just going to keep. Oh, I forgot to. Leonie, why didn't you tell me to take myself out?
Well, you were doing good. You weren't pausing at all.
Oh, okay. You know, we're just going to keep going around in these circles, creating more victims. So that's my question. How do we stop the madness?
Well, Michelle, on that line, then do you think the continuous characterizations like Sapphire and Precious and other questionable Black female characters in shows that are popular, always being presented to us is a good or bad thing, since we seem to need to be reminded that, yes, this is still going on, and what are we going to do about it? It's not just entertainment. What do you think?
I think if it stops at the level of, see, I remember, I don't think I read the book Sapphire, but I saw the movie Precious. And I remember there being a lot of reaction to it that, you know, that was just fiction, that those things don't happen. And so, you know, I believe they do happen because, you know, like Venita, I've seen some stuff. And so, so I think it's a good thing, Georgette, because I think we have to be continually goaded into accepting reality. And, you know, it's not the whole reality. All mothers, all Black mothers are not like Dolores. Thank God I didn't have one.
Me
you know,
either.
Daughter issues that I had with my mother. She was a freaking saint up next to Dolores.
Dolores made my mother part the Red Sea too.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. However, you know, we're living in a time and age where now occasionally you will run across a single father. But for the most part, we have left the rearing of children in this culture to the women. And so therefore, all of the childhood trauma very often is left at the hands of the woman. You know, Dolores didn't rape Margot, but she was Dolores's responsibility. She was the mother's responsibility. It was Dolores's responsibility to protect that child, even though the man is the one who was the victimizer. And so, you know, I think that just like we don't want, when you try to talk to white people about race and, you know, they start feeling all guilty and next thing you know, they're in tears and next thing you know, you can't have the conversation. It's not about trying to blame and guilt trip people, but it's about how do we begin to have conversations that lead us toward new behavior, better behavior. Because now we know, we didn't always know, but now we know what some of the long-term effects are of certain experiences, traumas. And so, you know, with knowledge comes an obligation to do better. You know, I posted something today about the medical industry giving psychotropic drugs to infants in foster care. Whoa. You know, it's we are just on some kind of insane shit. And anyway. I think my answer was yes, it's a good thing.
Okay. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you, Michelle. We're going to have to bring back the timekeeper.
No, Kim didn't.
Definitely
shade for real, Kim.
Well, Venita is here.
Stop acting out, Kim, with the time.
Yeah, I definitely understand that. I'm thinking about the thread that kind of keeps that we continue discussing here is like trauma. We don't deal well with trauma and traumatized people, whether it's small children in foster care or middle-aged elder. What are our protocols and what do we do? You know, we can't incarcerate everyone, certainly. So I don't know, and I know personally when I was a high school teacher, that was a conversation that we would often have, you know, especially when I worked in inner city schools. It's just like it became your responsibility to, you know, you're kind of like the counselor, the teacher, mama. you know, you name it. How do you help traumatized people? And I mean, and then Black folks, I mean, whether we're motherland on the continental Africans or in the diaspora, we're already traumatized, post-traumatic slave syndrome anyway. So, great comment. Anyone else, or should we just move on to?
I guess for me,
I think we're almost on. Oh, go ahead, Kim.
Oh, thank you. I agree with Michelle. I think that there is room at some end of the table for people like Dolores, and I also feel that we're talking about mental illness and power. So there's this balance between mental illness and power that we don't necessarily look through that lens often enough. So when I read Sapphire's book, and the book was called Push, the movie was called Precious, but the book was called Push, and you could kind of see that insanity begets insanity begets insanity. But prior to all of this, it was this, you know, slavery, and how Black women have just been raped for so long. And so when people we love do it to us, it's like this sad, sick repeating of the same tune, but on dark bodies. And so my problem with Dolores is this. I just get the impression that not only is she keeping the secrets, but she seems to be jealous of her daughter and the fact that this man found her attractive, and that she has turned her daughter into the competition, and she's turned her daughter into the woman who came and took her husband. And so that's where we really need to look at it as mental illness, because I think had Margot had her own daughters and she learned this lesson that daughters are treacherous and daughters will take your man, of course she would do that to her own daughter. She would find a man who would abuse her and continue this ungodly loop. So I really love that we're talking about it, and we're talking about it, and so what white people hear it, because it's in their homes too. But I just think that the more we talk about it, hopefully somebody gets to a therapist or gets to some help or something, because we definitely need to.
Is it especially I guess what's problematic for me is that a lot of times these representations of the monstrous mother, that she has to be like a heavy, dark-skinned Black woman. And so for me, that's another kind of, you know.
Could you repeat that, Nicole? She has to be what kind of dark woman?
Like a lot of times when we're talking about, the monstrous mother, they're described as like overweight and dark skinned. And that's what becomes kind of that slippery slope for me. Because it's almost as if, again, we are reenacting and utilizing those tropes. So either both or at least one.
Yeah, but I don't know, Nicole, if that is because we're reading Black literature, going to Black movies. Because like as I'm hearing you, I'm thinking about Betty Davis and No More Hangers. Now that was a scary chick.
I don't know. Fill me in. Like, was she a lighter skinned Black woman, or was she
white? White woman.
Oh, she's white. Okay.
White. Who was extremely abusive toward her child. So
Was that Joan Crawford?
Joan Crawford. Betty Davis. It's Joan Crawford.
Yes, Joan Crawford.
Mommy Dearest.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Betty Davis.
So
I'm
saying, I think you know, those stories are out there too, because it is a universal phenomenon.
Certainly is.
So I don't know, but I'm sorry. Go ahead.
But the two things that come to mind when Nicole brings this up is casting. That's the first thing, is who's doing the casting. And then the other thing that I think is more insidious is if the society says that as a bigger, darker woman, you are less attractive, does that make you that much more desperate to keep that man in your house, in your bed?
I don't necessarily believe that.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that for every single person.
Right.
But I just think that if the culture is saying to you that you are not attractive, and you buy into that, and you find yourself a little piece of a man, and then you find that little piece of a man touching your child, and you are buying into that image of yourself, would that matter?
I think it's an individual thing, really. I think a lot of it's economics, whether you're a coolie or whether you're a dark skin. It's a lot of it's economics. Poor. I think poor has more to do with it, from my experience. Poverty.
I just look at the videos and you see these guys with the light-skinned girls in the videos and all those. That's what attractive looks like, even to younger generations. I'm not saying that every dark-skinned woman has low self-esteem, because I know some fierce sisters. But I'm just wondering if you are at that intersection of believing that and in a relationship with somebody who is putting you down, does that matter? And poor. And wait. But you have affluent women who want to keep that affluence, that'll sell their daughters out too. Mm-hmm. So I don't know.
It's an individual thing. It experiences. Everyone's experience is different.
That's
which
right.
Which causes them to feel different about themselves.
That's
right. You know, so I don't even. This is so complicated.
Yep.
It is.
I agree 100%.
I agree too. Yeah, I do. I can definitely see what you all are saying. And a lot of times that's something that we don't discuss enough, you know, beauty or attractiveness as social or cultural capital. That a lot of times we do kind of have the stakes are such that if a woman is deemed attractive, the notion is she can, you know, she's someone, a wealthier man or something to that extent. So that is very complex. I guess I'm just waiting to see something different in Black film, and maybe that's too harsh. Because I know actors and actresses still have to eat, right? So, you know, and they love their crafts, obviously. So I just want to combat that. Even you all, what I see is problematic. Do y'all see the men on social media who act like Black mothers and they're always beating their kid? It's almost like this notion of we can't be gentle and tender and love our children. Even it's hard for me to stomach. There's this video that I couldn't even finish watching it. It's the clip, and they're saying like 30 things Black mothers say. And this shit is so vile. This shit is like, it's like, don't be leaving and obviously like I've heard some of those, but it's like, is that the totality of Black mothers? Is this, you know, is this how we ought to be represented? Even the social media comedians. And a lot of them are, I think, homosexuals, and they are, you know, acting like Black women, Black mothers, and they're always violent.
Yes. Michelle and I've had these conversations.
Like, is this what Black motherhood gets kind of reduced to? And then I guess the reality is stress, strife, and so forth. But when are we going to be captured in roles whereby, you know, we regardless of skin color and social class. I mean, I'm thinking like, what's the show with Florida? Good Times, right? I mean, they were poor. Oh,
Yes.
but Florida was she loved her children, and she was fierce. But I don't know. I don't know. I'm just waiting to see something different. And I noticed how even in my program, in my doctoral program, the white there's a white mother. She has 3 young sons. The hell, I have 3 kids too, but don't nobody have any, you know, it's not like I get any special consideration, you know. But it's a tenderness and a gentleness that I notice she's always afforded. Like they'll say like, oh well, I have children, I'm a mom too. Nope, nobody goes, you know, out of their way to think about Nicole. But I wouldn't even hold my breath. Like, when will that ever change, right? Is that connected to the stereotypes of the welfare queen, welfare mom? I mean, do you where does that come from?
I don't know, Nicole. It's funny what you say that. Did you say that? I don't even know Black women like that. And I know plenty of Black women. I don't know Black women that aren't tender with their children, that don't speak well to their children, that aren't loving. So no, they want that image projected of us. I mean, all this intentional. And the Black actors, it could be a lot of reasons. You know, they need that money or whatever. Who knows? It's not just the love of their career. I'm hungry. I need some groceries. So I'm feel about it. You know what I'm saying? It's the same way that women that are poor, no matter what color they are, they sometimes do things that that we don't dream of, that we don't have to do. But you don't know what you might have to do. You're not living down there in Jamaica.
That's true.
And other places that are poor. Believe me, you don't know what you might have to do.
That's true.
No, I'm very serious. You may work in that hotel 40, 50, 60 hours, 70 hours a week, 195, 50, 11 degrees, waiting on white folk. But the money you're getting is still not enough to put food on the table. So you have to really, I'm sensitive to it because I've been exposed to that. But I would never say never. Because you do not know. But I do know
just don't tell. Just don't tell.
Secrets, Georgette.
That's right.
I can tell the girls in the like this.
Oh my
God. Secrets, Georgette.
All right.
Right. Oh my gosh. Oh, that's right. Oh my gosh.
Like
I can't hear you. You're breaking up.
Michelle, you frozen.
Hello.
I can't hear you.
You are.
I know
Say it again.
She's saying something good, and we can't even hear her.
I know it is.
Wow.
She's still frozen.
I'm frozen.
Oh.
Well,
Michelle, until you get unfrozen, I'm throwing this plug for 2 shows. One, Black Lightning. I was so enthralled. You got to watch it. It's on CW. It's a Black superhero with a Black family. Okay. Wow. His wife got this tight TWA. It was wonderful. And the other one is a movie. It's Proud Mary. Now you want to talk about
I have to see that, yeah.
A tough sister doing some mothering. It's a complex story, but you need to watch it.
Okay. Write that down.
Yeah.
Check it out.
Will do. Black Lightning, Geo, is that something that we watch online, or is it on?
If you have the CW in your lineup, you can watch it online. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
All right, I got that.
You know what else is really good? Queen Sugar.
Oh yes. You know, I forgot about that.
Love is going on up in that series, Queen Sugar.
I watched Queen
Yes,
Sugar,
yes.
this whole series from the beginning. I've been watching it. Very good
You can
series.
get Black
Oh, yeah.
Lightning. You can get Black Lightning on Netflix.
Netflix.
It
Okay.
goes on Netflix the day after every Tuesday.
Every
Oh,
Tuesday.
Okay. Cool.
Thank you,
Okay.
Leonie.
Okay. That was good. Well, I don't know. Did we lose? Oh no, I see Michelle. Okay. I see
Can you hear me?
the image. Okay, I
Yes.
can hear you, Michelle. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. I'm done. I've lost the moment.
Oh
Aww.
man, Michelle.
You were gonna say something good to Michelle.
I
We
know.
can
Tell us
feel it.
something about
Oh.
it.
No,
I'm so
I
happy to
was
see
just I was
everyone. I
just
don't mean to
gonna
be disruptive, but I'm so happy to see everyone together. This
Yes.
is
it's so
this is
nice.
fabulous.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, I am loving this so much. I'm sorry. I know I'm being disruptive. I really, but I just am so. I haven't seen Gio and Kim and Leonie and Michelle. This is great. It's great.
Yes.
Come on, Leonie, tell us something good. Come on. I know you're upset over there. Leonie got that smile. I love Leonie's smile. She
I'm
get
just
that smile
listening.
going. She got some stuff for us. She got some
Yeah,
stuff.
I'm
Come
just
on, Leonie.
listening.
Don't hold
I'm
back
listening. Yeah, it's an
Yeah.
interesting conversation.
with a beautiful smile.
Yes,
Yes.
indeed.
Yeah.
Spill the tea, Leonie. Spill the tea. Come on, Kim. You got some tea.
I guess I'm just wondering. This is my question is to Leonie. So when we're asked the question if Push and Sapphire and Precious, is it a different feeling in Jamaica when I know we have the colorism here too, but the fact that the characters are dyeing their skin and bleaching and all of this stuff, I'm just wondering what's your take on the question when you look at the different culture in um, Jamaica? Is it the same as what the way we're talking about it in this country?
There's lots of I would say colorism is probably probably more extreme
Yes, for
in
sure.
the West Indies and Jamaica in particular.
Yes.
That colorism is really,
Bad.
yeah, it's really bad.
Mm-hmm.
You have to keep in mind, like, there's nothing. Yeah, there's no. There's not really a way to like have these conversations. Like, I think what we have to remember is that we're in context in terms of living in the Western world and living in first world countries,
Yes.
where you have conversations like mental illness, which is like a very
Yes.
luxurious conversation to have.
Yes.
That
Yes.
like
It
you
is.
don't get to
Wow.
have those conversations in the everyday in the Caribbean or in most parts of the world, right?
Not at
Like you
all.
don't get to have that reflection, which is why a character like Verdine exists, because you leave and there's an opportunity to see yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Like you don't get that opportunity if you stay in place.
Yep.
So
Oh, Leona, you made me think about Jamaica Kincaid's. Isn't that Annie John when she's saying and the native and the tourist, the difference between the native and
Yes.
the tourist, and then she's saying, and then the tourist, you see yourself,
Yes.
and at that
yeah,
moment, Verdine does become the
Yes.
tourist in that
Yes.
other
she
land.
is,
Wow.
yeah. Because that's the thing. It's like if I'm gonna find the link to Jamaica Kincaid reading her poem "Girl,"
Yes.
Yeah.
because the thing is that like what saddens me, like it honestly fills me with a tremendous amount of mourning, is that whenever we are talking about abuse and women, that that our language is so steeped in patriarchy that we still are blaming women. We blame women for what happens as though it's not patriarchy.
Mm-hmm.
All of our language is about what mothers should be doing and who's responsible for this. And it's like, it's not down to, this is a system that has created this problem. It is not down to an individual. But all of our language is about mothers raise children. They cause trauma. They do this. It's just, it's not true. First of all,
it's not.
Yeah.
My husband and I just had a very stimulating conversation because he just got back from Jamaica for 2 weeks last week. And when he comes back, we always have these really stimulating conversations. And that was one of the conversations where they, you know, everyone wants to say, well, the mothers are there with these children, and it's just the mother, the grandmother, aunt, uncles, you know, cousins, everyone, all women are raising the children. And her mother and I are discussing, yeah, that's right. But yeah, the men are spreading these babies around the island. They're not, you know, it's a poor place. They're not, you know, trying to do any better. I even look at the
even that is down to systems.
Yes, it is.
And, you know, that doesn't change the fact that what's happening is awful. It doesn't change the fact that you have individuals who are not being responsible. But to act like it only comes from like their sense of agency is just like ridiculous.
It is. It definitely, we're having a conversation. It's just.
That's definitely a great argument.
Look, you will not find anyone who will complain more about West Indian men. They drop their seed like they're spilling water. Like, I mean, I swear. But like, it's just like, but there's reasons why this happens.
Yes.
That and the.
But I guess for me, I thought that we were talking about when that woman puts herself in a position to be the gatekeeper. That there are certain choices that one woman makes that a different woman does not make. And so when I was talking about Dolores, I was talking about the choice she made, that from whatever her background is, whatever system she is in, that's still a choice that impacted her daughter, because whether she had to make it, whether there's a system or not, that was still the way she handled that. And I know women who they would have put their daughter first. There is that still that possibility of saying, yes, I'm poor, this man, I'm gonna kick this man to the curb. I know people who will cut that boy.
Oh yeah, I know. He one of those cutters. We know that, Kim.
My comment wasn't in reaction to anything. I just want to be like clear. It's just more the general idea that like, whenever we talk about abuse, it's always steeped into what it is that women are doing. That's just a habit that's how we're habituated, is to take the language down to the individual, which obviously choice exists there. But like, what happens to a person that you could see and know someone who you birthed is in pain, and that you feel that you can't do anything about it, or that you'll stand back? Like, there's something there.
Yes.
I mean, it's not, I mean, unless you believe in evil, which I do not, but like, there's something else there. And I think that's the problem, is that that's a situation that we're in this time, is that we're growing in our understanding of trauma, but we don't yet, because I heard the question before, what do we do? How do we do it? We don't actually know enough to know how to manage the depths of trauma that can be visited on Black bodies, especially on Black female bodies. We're just starting to have the conversation, right? Because it's like, even this question of like, is push or is precious or whatever, unlike, say, white people, where do you have these conversations within the Black community? We probably rely on media more than any other group. Right?
Yeah.
We're not going to have it in our therapist office.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. It makes me wonder. It makes me go back to what were our ancestors. How did our ancestors deal? And I'm meaning, 3, 4, 5, 6 generations removed. I'm just wondering what, and I'm thinking, of course, that
sorry, Nicole, Michelle, can you mute yourself?
She is mute.
Yeah, she is mute. Can you hear me?
Oh, okay. I don't know. So there's some kind of background noise, like someone's doing dishes or something.
Yeah, that's twin A. Twin A was in
Oh,
Syria.
okay.
Go in there.
Oh, in Syria.
Sorry. Go for it then.
Did y'all see me giving the look?
I'm sorry. Okay, keep going.
I didn't know it's this thing is better than using my cell phone. But no, I'm just thinking about how, perhaps accessing specific, and I'm really thinking about African traditional religions that, had a way of dealing with, possessions and spirits and, all other things that we don't necessarily like to get into in our kind of our Western constructions of religion and mainly Christianity. But I don't even fathom, like, I can't even fathom just to be an African, to be a captive African and to take that monstrous, atrocious ride and to become an African slave at that point. And then when we talk about the gender component, being raped, and so I can't even imagine. So it's just, yeah, it's just so much trauma. Sometimes I wonder, how did Octavia Butler do it? Like, how did she sit with those characters and, and other writers who kind of deal with that?
Well, she checked out early. That's how she dealt with it.
Looking at, so that's how you, yeah.
Yeah, she laid it down. It was real heavy.
Get it out. Yeah, because it's tough. And and how that residue is still remains with us. I don't know. But I do say we have to keep doing this. We have to keep pushing the envelope. And this is why reading circles and book clubs, and this is why this work is so important. This is grassroots and connecting this way, right? This is why this is really important work. And I know we don't celebrate them, and not many of us, like, I never really hear Michelle wanting to be celebrated for this. I've never heard, but we don't celebrate it enough. And this is how so many of us, we're saving our own lives through these connections. So so that's definitely something I want to do. I know we are thank you all for this wonderful conversation. I know we are definitely over our time, and so I don't want to go into the other questions, but I definitely want to know if there are any final words that you all have, anything you're moved to say in closing, or just whatever.
I just wanted to just kind of continue the same conversation in terms of us talking about this from a woman's point of view. I'm always grateful when Leonie speaks, because it just opens me up to different thoughts. And what I'm thinking is that it's only women that are having these conversations. And I think as she's saying, that as we evolve, we will change the perspective and change the lens. But I would love a book about men talking about how, they made these choices, and then we're talking about them, and that we have more discussions where we put the focus on the man. It's not that he left his seed and he's gone, and so we're dealing with the fallout of how this impacts 3 women. So I just know that wherever we start the conversation, it's still a conversation being had.
That's powerful. Yeah, you're right, because that's a very Western, I hate to even use imperialist, but but to think that, like, we could think of many ways, or we could, that aversion to Dolores, right? Because of how we how we live in opportunity, I guess, in the West. So I removed the positionality from that and, critiqued her and even Ella. I think Ella is so she mirrors her, but Ella's is not as pronounced, right? But Ella has some shortcomings and some complicity, I think, as well. But again, still using the language of these women being complicit and not necessarily the patriarchy. That patriarchy is the problem there.
Yeah.
That is powerful.
I still think that the individual stories are really important, but I think that the conversation about about systems is such an important conversation, and it would for me, it has the potential of moving us from pointing fingers at each other to reaching across to each other. Because I've seen this, like in my work around NVC, they do like restorative practices and restorative circles, and they do this like in the favelas in Brazil, where someone will go and like kill somebody's like son, and they're living next door to the murderer, and they have to find a way to live with each other because they have nowhere to go in that society, right? And so, and it's not about like Christian forgiveness or any of that mumbo. Like it's not about any of that stuff. It's actually about like having some sense of what the full story is, right? And being able to see each other for like our humanity. And I know it sounds like, woo woo or whatever, but like it's closer to the whole truth. I just feel like right now we just don't have real ways of being able to have those kinds of conversations right now. It's so much easier to blame and call the police and put things, and none of those things work for us. None of them work. Like if they worked, I wouldn't say, I'd say nothing, but none of them work.
You're right.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
They're not for us. We're meant to be the object of those systems, not to be not to be people who are protected by them.
That's true. That's so true.
I would just like to share my answer to question 5, which this is Dolores talking to John. And she says, I can't speak for Margot. Margot is a big woman. She knows what she like and what she not like. If you want my humble opinion, not a bone in that girl's body is deserving of anything you can sell for good money. She doesn't like Margot very much. And sometimes we like our children and they don't like us.
Not at all. That's right. Anyone else? Did anyone else have like a comment or? No?
Well, I can't say it in the air, so I'll leave it alone. Because I have a Caribbean mother-in-law.
Oh, we love Venita, yes. You know what I loved? I loved the lovemaking scene. And that it was just beautiful, right? And that there was, I always hear in craft talks for writers, I hear people say, show, don't tell. And it was so much. That was just beautiful. I just kept thinking, like, how did she do that? And it wasn't like generally, I know when I'm reading like more heterosexual literature, especially from a man's point of view, because typically when we're, talking about the lovemaking scenes, he can't wait to get it out, and then she needs to suck it, and then that's the big climax. Finally, it's in her mouth.
It's not the way it goes, Nicole.
Like I sat in on some sessions before, and I could it's just like, I was like, oh my goodness, these men just like one after the other. That was the big thing. Like, and then if she can like gag, that's a bigger thing, right? So
when I read that scene, Nicole, I wrote a note in the book to call Venita and ask her, did this do it for you? Because she had been
you telling secrets.
she had been calling me talking about when they gonna get
it was a great love scene. But I was waiting for my mother to tap. I'm like, Michelle called me on my phone. Oh my God. They can read the chapters. Well, what do you think about that? It was a while coming, but it was fabulous.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
But then I also wondered. Go ahead, Venita. I'm sorry.
Nothing. We just want some real BS tonight.
That was beautiful. But I was also wondering because, contrasting this, the relationship between Bernine and Margot is the homosexual male, and that we understand their fate and how their bodies need a greater punishments and consequences. And so I like the way Ben, her advocacy shows up, and it's kind of between the lines, right? That we are greeting her advocacy. But I'm also going back to kind of like that stereotype of, it's sensual when it's lesbians, but if it were two men, people are not so apt to accept that. And
right.
The question is, and why, and in a lot of the popular discourse, especially in the hip hop era, the popular rap lyric, "Got a girlfriend." I mean, to be with another woman, even if one still identifies as heterosexual or is, as Michelle commented, bi-curious. So I'm also wondering, like, is that not also kind of a privilege to be able to access that kind of a lovemaking scene and it be totally digestible? And when we contrast that to men, if these were two men,
Mm-hmm.
and again, patriarchy. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there are quite a few gay hip hop, very well known, very masculine looking artists.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So masculine, in fact, so probably one of the reasons why this type of lovemaking couldn't be embraced. It's just too hard when you got a hip hopper. But the masculinity is on the outside, and I just thought it was fabulous, though. Absolutely fabulous.
Well, women do tend to write better erotic stories than men. Yes. I don't know what it is. Better imagination? I don't know.
Well, like Nicole said, half the time you have to use your imagination.
Boom! There we go. As the mic drops.
Okay, Nicole.
Oh my goodness.
However, I am still wondering, Margot, I can't wait till I get to the rest of the book because Verdi got it going on, but I'm not too sure about Margot. I do wonder, actually I feel very strongly about it at this point, I haven't gone through the rest of the book, that Margot, it's like a more mature man being with a younger woman. Is Margot just started out looking up to her as that sister mother figure? And this is a continuation? Because quite frankly, I think Verdine is too smooth. I just think it's kind of like out of her league. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not even sure why she's there.
Oh, now you sound like what Nicole said.
Well, that was my feeling from, the personalities that are coming out in the writing. I'm not feeling all this like this. I'm not sure about what Margot, and Verdi, I'm not sure about her either. It almost seems a little freakish. It's like Verdi, girl, you need more. And Margot, you need to go on back down there and do what you do. You know what I'm saying? It's like a daughter. She's looking up to her for a host of reasons. More of those reasons than saying concretely that I am gay. That's Margot. Verdi knows what she is. She knows what she wants. But Margot is still kind of like you would look up to a bigger sister. I still feel that. I still feel that feeling. I don't really feel they're on the same level. I still feel that Margot is, even with the lovemaking scene, it just was kind of, probably would have been better if Verdi had a little more like somebody on her level. I just see Margot down here. I don't see it as a mature love on Margot's side. I don't think she's worthy of Verdi.
I agree.
I think Verdi, you need to move on right now. Move on.
But
Margot,
then the story would be over. No, she can't go anywhere yet.
Well, I'm just basing it off the love scene, off the lovemaking scene. I'm just that's what I'm basing. Not the it's just like, girl, go ahead, Verdi. She said, "This has been real." Been real, Margot. Girl, I gotta move on. Well, you see, I can't be a Verdi because that's what I would say. It's been real.
Oh my goodness.
Call me when you in town next time. I gotta
go. Oh my goodness.
I know that's right.
But anyway, I felt, be honest. What did you think of Leonie? Why y'all quiet over there? How'd you feel about that scene, Leonie? We got 2 minutes. I know we late, so but how'd you feel about that? What you thinking?
No, I agree. I don't. I was kind of suspect of it.
Okay.
At the same time, though, I was suspect of it. But at the same time, I think about it in context, and it's like, where else is Margot gonna go to, like, I don't know, figure her stuff out? It's not like she can go to the club or something.
Well, this is true.
But yeah, there is a little bit of like, especially because she knew. But at the same time, too, I'm also thinking this is like my Western brain thinking, being suspicious because she knew her from childhood, and there's a 10-year age gap.
The childhood thing is just turned into a different thing for me. Maybe I felt differently if they met,
Breaking up, you tried closing your video.
Me or Leonie?
No, you sound good now.
No, I can hear you fine. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if they would have met and they're both adults, I might feel a little differently with the age difference. But she knew her from a child, and that kind of does something different for me. Along with Margot being less mature, period. But that just kind of makes it kind of not feel so good in my stomach type thing. I don't know why. Other than
it's the thirstiness. It's the thirstiness.
It's not even thirsty. It's almost like it's not right. You get that not right feeling. You're reading the girl's storybooks on the couch. She's looking up to you like a big sister. She can't wait to get home from college so you can come in there and make cookies with her.
Cookies, yeah.
Yeah. That's what they're cooking. That's what they're cooking.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
And I gotta go now. This is what happens. I gotta go because you two, G.O.
It was a slippery slope.
It was slippery.
We slipped.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree too.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying because most of the stories where we hear about May, December,
right,
relationships is some dirty old man looking at his, friend's daughter.
Right.
And we're supposed to accept that relationship. And, oh, that's just a man being a man.
Right.
But no, that's pedophilia. So, so here we are trying to be comfortable with it, with, same sex. So would we be the same way if it was two guys?
No, I'm more comfortable. I have no problems with being comfortable with the same sex.
I'm just talking about the age difference.
Oh, it's on the age difference. That doesn't involve me as much as it's almost like were you grooming her? That comes into my mind. When you're grooming her, when Dolores dropped her off at Ellis, so she go do what she needed to do. That child was a child, what, 10 years old? And what is it, 18-year-old, a 10-year span between the two of them? So
well, the thing,
it just makes me feel kind of creepy.
The thing is that like there's nothing to indicate that Verdine knew anything about her sexuality at the time that Margot was a child. And I think the other thing too is that like I don't know, and this is something that I've raised up before. I don't know if the notion of like the way that identity is so linked to sexuality actually holds up.
Right.
Like I am suspect of that whole thing. Yeah, so there's nothing to indicate because Verdine wasn't she married or something? I can't remember now.
Yeah, she was.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean
anything.
But it also doesn't mean nothing. Verdine was she married?
Doesn't mean like.
Yeah, she was married to a man.
Okay.
She's with a man.
People that are gay that are married to men or.
But there are also lots of people who discover that like later.
That's true too.
That's true.
That's
true Kim's
too.
gone.
That's the whole thing. It is the unknown that makes me feel those quivers in my belly because there is the unknown. We don't know if she was where she was. We don't know that. She might not even been there, but we don't know that she wasn't there.
And I think I'm probably more bothered by. I think I'm more bothered, not bothered, but like I think the greater imbalance is more about the fact that Verdine has been outside the country, and that Margot's been on the same block that she was like born on, like her whole life.
For me, as the whole,
like that's a bigger gap.
Their experiences. That's
yeah. So it'd be interesting to see how it develops, like what ends up happening there.
It'll be very interesting where this ends up.
And also just Margot is even feeling a bit intimidated by her baby sister, who's getting a better, speaking
that's so true.
The proper diction. So Margot's just the home girl, where Verdine has this level of worldliness, sophistication.
Yeah, she went to school in London, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask Leonie, is there some kind of Jamaica Canada link? Because that character, when they had the violent scene in the with Alfonso in the conference room, and his cousin Dwight, one that's working as the general manager, Dwight went to private school in Canada. So is that like a common migration route?
Yeah, there was. That's how my mother ended up in Canada. There was there was an opening because Jamaica is part of the Commonwealth, as is Canada, and England is obviously the head of the Commonwealth. So immigration opened up in the 50s to people of color in the Commonwealth. So and there's lots of people who come here for education going back to the 50s, and going back to the 50s, and there are even banks in Canada that operate in Jamaica. So there's definitely a pipeline there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
My mother's sister-in-law, my mother-in-law's sister went to Canada and she came to the United States.
Yeah.
Yeah. She went to Canada.
That's not unusual.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty common. Like that's how my mom they opened up immigration to the Commonwealth, and that's how my mother ended up here. And she brought her brother and sisters, and then both of my sisters who were born in Jamaica came to Canada.
Wow.
Well, girls, Trump is going to bring that to a halt.
Oh.
Yeah. I mean, it's unheard of.
Bring it to a halt.
They were citizens within a couple of years. Like it's not something that's even possible now. So.
Well, also too, that you won't be able to bring extended family if he has it this way. It will be wife, husband, and children. No grandmothers, aunts, uncles. No sponsorship. None of that. That's a part of this new bill that he's opening up. Before you could bring everyone along. He's trying to cut that out. You don't bring nobody. Yeah. You come, if you got a husband, okay. If you have children, okay. But grandma, grandpa, everybody else, brother, sister,
Unless you're Norwegian.
Right.
I just want to say one more thing, which I think part of the attraction that people are having to Verdine is the fact that she's like, I don't know, the circumstances of the life of Margot and Dolores and Thandi and all those people there, they're like, they're kind of parasitic in their way of living, right? Like Margot and Dolores are like latched on to Thandi and her success,
right?
And it's like and because Verdine has been abroad and she is very independent.
Right.
And I'm wondering if that's part of our attraction to her because that's very Western, right? Just like women like doing things like for themselves, kind of like thing. And it's like you get the sense that like Margot and Dolores are like they're gonna get somewhere, but they're gonna have to like earn it on the back of Thandi or literally on the back of Margot. Like that's what it takes.
Maybe that's why. Maybe because we can relate more to Verdine's life and who she is because we're more, and we're looking at Margot like, girl, back to the hotel.
Yeah.
No, that could be true. It's a biasness, but that could be one of the reasons why we're more attracted to Verdine.
Cool. Yeah, that makes sense.
Well, thank you for that, Leonie.
Yeah, I could.
Well, I'm really liking reading a text that's Jamaican. I'm really enjoying it. So
good.
And I'm liking the conversation and everything. So, and like I said, I'm really enjoying the language in the book. So,
patois. I love patois too.
Yes.
It's beautiful. Okay, well, if no more comments, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Great discussion.
Thank you, Nicole, for the questions. They were great.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all. Great conversation. All right, well, we're signing off, I guess. Oh, go ahead, Leonie.
No, I said, I'm sorry we lost Kim, but...
yeah.
Oh,
you did.
Well, Michelle, I guess I'll turn it over to you and...
Thank you, Nicole. These really were very, very deep questions. And so deep that they brought Venita and Georgette Moses out of the woodwork
No,
That's pretty
true.
amazing.
That's the truth, Nicole. No, Michelle called me asking
They don't want to come talk to me, but they'll come talk to you.
Nicole,
It's not
Michelle
like
called me asking was I coming. I said, I'm waiting for you to put the link up. That was 6 o'clock.
all right now.
I was waiting for the link. I have my stuff and everything. And questions here. And then she said, and she called me back and said, guess who's coming to dinner?
Oh yeah, it's just
Leo. I said, oh my gosh. She said, oh, I had my stuff, like the Bible girl, I had my little book, my little question.
Oh my goodness.
I read this stuff yesterday and read it today. I'm like, okay, I'm ready.
Georgette, that was a beautiful surprise.
Yes, it was.
Good seeing you all.
Wow.
Good seeing you all.
But anyways, I can't
yeah. So
8:39.
you all have a good. You all have a good week, a safe week, a happy week, and we will see you next week reading our story together.
Indeed.
Everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Have a good night, Leonie. Bye.